My name is Stan Dodson. I'm manager of La Farine Bakery in Oakland's Diamond District. About a month after I moved into the Diamond District, I discovered Diamond Park, which is amazing. I mean, this was a half a block away from my apartment and just 2 blocks away from the bakery, and I couldn't believe it. A lot of times on a day off, I'll check into the bakery for an hour or two. I'll take care of a few little things, but a lot of times that's just a launching pad for me to really enjoy this trail system. I literally just walk a couple blocks, pass a few stores, a little bit of the residential neighborhood, and then once I enter Diamond Park, it's entering a whole new world. Over time, as I started to explore this area, I realized that Diamond Park was the trailhead for a trail system that spans the entire East Bay. So Diamond Park connects directly to Diamond Canyon Park, and then once you get to the top of Diamond Canyon, there's a connection right into Joaquin Miller Park, which really is Oakland's premier wildland park with over 500 acres, and then it connects right to Redwood Regional Park and the Barrier Ridge Trail. From right here in the heart of urban Oakland, we're connected to hundreds of miles of trails. You could hike for days and days.
I'm Dennis Evanowski, and I'm the publisher of the Alameda Sun newspaper, and I'm a resident of the city of Oakland, however, and I've lived in Oakland since 1987. And anywhere I get planted, I get very, very interested in the history of the area. Let's go back 1,000 years. These creeks were full of salmon, they were full of trout. There were grizzly bears here, and there were birds like you wouldn't believe. And crowning the whole thing was this huge, wonderful redwood forest on top of all this. When the Native Americans were here, there were 2 settlements that the Ohlone had. They settled the crest of the hill through what is now Joaquin Miller Park, and then on the other side, they settled into what we now call Trestle Glen. Then, unfortunately for the Native Americans, the Franciscans came, and their goal was to set up missions. By 1801, the heathens were gone, in the words of the Spanish, so it took them not very long, about 25 years, to convert the Native Americans or chase them away. A lot of them died from the disease that Europeans brought along with them. By the time 1820 came around, the Spanish were pretty well set in. The next important thing that happened was 1848, when gold was discovered, and all the unsuccessful gold seekers would come and settled in what we call the East Bay today. So there were a lot of men. Hugh Diamond is one example of this, where he didn't do well finding any gold, but he was able to set himself up where he could do what we call mine the miners. So he owned a store and then was a whiskey salesman and made his money that way. If you look at some of the earlier towns in gold country, you find out a lot of them exist because somebody came and put a store there. And then they decide, well, now we'll put a church here. Well, what about the kids? We'll put a school here. And the next thing you know, you've got a little town. And Hugh Diamond was part of all this. And then 1916, the city stepped in and purchased the property, and now it's Diamond Park. Joaquin Miller is one of my favorite people. A polite definition of Joaquin Miller would be an eccentric. He was famous as a wannabe kind of bad writer and passed himself off as the poet of the Sierras. He was also a horse thief. He was also a robber. He settled up on top of the hill there and built himself that little house that's still there. Writers would meet up there. They would come up to his place and they'd have a meeting, and we know Jack London would go to the meetings, and we know that Ina Colbreth and Bret Hart would go to the meetings. We have this wonderful picture of him standing at his house, and there's not one single tree in sight. This is a picture of him, and the land is totally barren there, no trees. The story goes, he planted 70,000 trees. He passes away, and then 2 or 3 years later, the city just bought the property. Just as they did in Diamond Park, the city buys the land up there.
I've been with the Park District about 16 years, started out in the real estate department, helping to buy these beautiful parklands, and moved from there into running the Trails program. Back in the 30s, in the depths of the Great Depression, some really far-sighted community leaders in the East Bay worked hard to preserve these lands. And now they're kind of hemmed in by development and subdivisions and people. But back then, Oakland was a small town, and this was all pretty much undeveloped areas. And it was just an amazing effort to have the foresight to preserve these ridgeline lands. There's almost a continuous spine of preserved parkland along the ridges all the way through the East Bay. From here, you could probably connect to 500 or 600 miles of interconnected trails and not cover the same piece of ground twice.
My name is Mike Udko. I'm a 68-year-old retired physician, and I'm a mountain biker. I started mountain biking about 8 years ago after I had to give up hiking, backpacking, and skiing because of knee problems. I became somewhat depressed and then discovered mountain biking, and then discovered my mountain biking group, the Bicycle Trails Council of the East Bay. We're the oldest mountain biking organization in the country, and we speak for 2,000 mountain bikers in the Bay Area. It's a wonderful organization that is very community-oriented. On the fourth Saturday of every month, we bring in a group of workers to do various projects. The big projects we've done are to reroute some of the trails that were eroded, unsafe, or ecologically unsound. The Cinderella Trail, a very steep trail, very dangerous trail, abruptly ended on a very popular hiking trail. It was an accident waiting to happen. Our trail designer, Henry Mitchell, designed a gate that would force bikers to stop, preventing a crash with a hiker or another biker. We are working in collaboration with Public Works. They have come in with heavy equipment to drill the holes for us to put our fence posts in. After the holes are drilled, we will fill them, put the fence post in, and complete the gate.
My name is Michelle Krieg, and I am the Restoration and Nursery Manager for Friends of Saucil Creek. Friends of Saucil Creek was founded in 1996 as a group of local citizens who wanted to give back to Saucil Creek and the surrounding watershed. Each year, we have about 4,000 volunteers who contribute about 10,000 service hours to the watershed. Most of these volunteers are students who are engaging in environmental education programs and community service workdays. Most of our projects involve habitat restoration work, so taking out non-native invasive species and then planting native species. We also do creek monitoring, so we do aquatic insect monitoring, we do bird monitoring, and a lot of water quality monitoring. Not only are we showing them that nature is this wonderful thing that they should enjoy, but also showing them that they can give back to it, that they can be stewards. We also run a native plant nursery in Joaquin Miller Park. The native plant nursery is really instrumental in helping our group grow and revegetate this watershed. We collect cuttings and native seeds from throughout the watershed with volunteers, and we use those propagules to propagate native plants. We revegetate the banks, which creates habitat, and then that habitat supports smaller life, so insects and smaller rodents, which supports the birds and everything else. I grew up hiking with my mom. She would take me on walks along the creek and show me cool rocks, and we'd look at fish, tadpoles, little bugs, and I just loved it. And I realized I wanted to protect that sort of habitat and to be a part of the solution. That's why I think it's so important to continue that legacy of bringing people out to the creek and getting them excited about this place.
Members? Do we want money? Do we want volunteers?
I'm Emily Rosenberg. I've been coming to Joaquin Miller Park for about 30 years. I first came here when I brought my two big dogs here. And the first time I was here, I got so lost. Oh my goodness, I was almost in tears. I had no idea where I was. And I had to ask a stranger to give me a ride back to my car. So I'm very attuned to people's needs in this park. And this year I happen to be serving as chair of the Friends of Joaquin Miller Park. And that's the group that acts as an advisory to the city on the needs for this park. We all have different ways of using it. Some of us are hikers, some bring dogs, some are equestrians, some are cyclists. And we're all deeply committed to the park. The city has limited resources. And our group, which is all volunteers, has stepped in over and over for the past decade to do some of the thinking, the planning, and to provide a lot of the volunteer labor to get things done in the park. Typical of the things that Friends of Joaquin Miller Park has accomplished is marking and remarking the trails so people don't have the experience I had of getting so desperately lost. We also put a fenced dog run in this park. And people do come from many parts of the city to use this dog run. It is special in that it gives people a lot of time to socialize. And as we predicted, there are social networks that have formed in the park. People become friends across age, race, class, circumstance. It's a very low-cost facility that serves hundreds and hundreds of people every single day of the year.
My name's Deidre Joyner. I'm a second-generation Oakland realtor. I do service the adjacent cities, but this is where I live, and this is the majority of the properties I sell are right here in Oakland. San Francisco is the #1 rental market in terms of cost in the country, and so people are coming over to Oakland. It's not a hidden secret. We have always been here, but people, I think, are rediscovering it, and there's been a huge renaissance in restaurants in the last maybe 5 to 10 years. If you look on the map, there's these neighborhoods that are very, very close and clustered to this luscious park with trails. Diamond, Glenview, Piedmont, Montclair. Piedmont Pines, there's Oakmore, and then on top of that is Joaquin Miller. The park connects these neighborhoods to each other. We're not talking about something that you have to drive to if you live in these neighborhoods. It's something that is really a stone's throw from your property. We're able, within a minute or two from our house, actually hike. That's very unusual. That is something that Oakland offers that is unique.
Groups from Oakland or even outside of Oakland will contact some of the nonprofits like Friends of Joaquin Miller Park or the Diamond Improvement Association and ask for a hiking tour. And I've been the go-to guy for that for the last few years. I've taken youth from Brothers on the Rise on hikes before. One of the things that I really want to make sure they understand is this park is a City of Oakland park, and it belongs to them and all of us. I teach them a little bit of trail etiquette, like staying to the right of the trail, being aware of other trail users. Getting them up here, they're always excited to be in this park. It's a complete different world that really is only 4 miles from where they live. They're blown away. They had no idea that this existed in Oakland.
As a group leader at Brothers on the Rise, I work with the youth directly. So that means I see them when they get off from school, help them with their homework. We do check-ins if they have any problems to solve. And we also do field trips. We have guest speakers come in. And so I'm there to facilitate all that. The youth we work with all reside in East Oakland, California. Some of them do not have the type of role models that young men need growing up, and so we provide that. I thought it was a good idea to get the youth out of their normal setting and bring them up to the hills and the forest and the nature. Being aware of it and having access to it is something that's going to change their outlook on their city and know that it's more than just the avenue. Because I feel like this is a place for everybody. We need to open it up, invite more people, and make it more known.
You know, when I take someone on a hike from Diamond Park up into Joaquin Miller Park, you know, they keep asking, are we still in Oakland? Are we still in Oakland? And yes, we're still in Oakland. You know, we get up into this beautiful redwood forest and we're still in Oakland, California.
We feel very lucky that we have this amazing forested park 5 minutes away from Safeway. I mean, there is no better urban-rural interface than what's here.
These parks in Oakland provide a refuge for many of the native plants and the wildlife that live here. There are deer and native bees and coyotes and snakes and rainbow trout and all sorts of wildlife that depend on these corridors and these natural resources that we find here in Oakland.
We've got to live up to the ideals and dedication of our founders back in the 30s who convinced the voters of the East Bay to tax themselves in the depths of the Depression to establish this district in the first place. And that's a high bar we have to live up with.
Way beyond my lifetime, Diamond Canyon and Joaquin Miller Park and Redwood Regional Park and all these other parks that are there in my neighborhood, they're not going anywhere. And it's largely thanks to people in the 40s and the 50s that got this going and people today that keep it going.
Being in nature, being in the woods, being by Sassel Creek, being in the East Bay Hills, I mean, that's my church. That's where I can escape the hustle and bustle. I could, you know, ponder relationships and ponder, you know, business ideas. It's a place where I can really let everything go and I love it. I don't know how else to say it.